It's time for Measure Twice.
Welcome to Measure Twice. I'm Rob Perugini, along with Joel Graber from Graber Customer Modeling and Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential, and you're listening to us on Michiana's News Talk 95.3 MNC. We're brought to you in part by Leatherman Supply, everything windows, doors, cabinets, and countertops, with the showroom now open in Granger next to C. Kramer Interiors, and Hoosier Hardwood Floors, Michiana's trusted and valued experts on hardwood floors. You could visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com. Well, just like every other change of seasons around here, boy, do we get some storms out here. Like it was pretty amazing display of lightning that I witnessed yesterday, and all I could think about was like, man, if there's hail, all those poor roofs that are just getting hammered, among other things, cars and all that stuff. It's pretty crazy. But before we get into like our actual topic today, I had a question for you, Joel, that you may or may not be able to answer, but I'm going to give it a shot.
Okay.
What do you, in your opinion, what do you think the best roof is for a place that gets regular hail like we do here in the Midwest?
Metal.
Metal?
Yeah.
And within metal, because that might seem obvious, like everybody was probably like thinking that, but is there a version of shingle roof that is more of a better?
Asphalt shingles are going to get damaged,
right? No matter how thick they are.
Yeah.
They're just,
a new one's going to hold up better.
So. A thatched roof.
Yeah, you could. A thatched roof just absorbs it.
What about
bounces off
a tile roof?
I think they could potentially break, I would think.
I don't think a tile roof in our climate would be a good thing.
Because of the change in temperature all the time?
The drastic changes.
They're meant more for warmer, dry.
Slate would hold up.
Oh, yeah.
Faux slate.
I mean, it's plastic.
Are you not a fan of faux slate?
No, I like it. I mean, the newer iterations of that they're
nice. It's nice.
They look.
And you're Joel's not a roofer, but you contract roofing a lot.
Yeah, we deal with roofing.
Yeah, but metal is.
I like that stuff.
If you're gonna stand up to hail, metal is But then not all metal roofs are the same.
No.
Right.
No.
Is it a gauge difference?
That's what
there
I was
are
thinking.
different gauges. There's different finishes that are better. And then also the style of the roof itself, like a standing seam, that's going to hold up better for the most part too, to like wind and do a better job of not leaking at all.
When you say standing seam, though, what does that mean?
Standing seam is where you see it's got like just the one rib where the pieces come together. Usually they're about 24 inches wide, the panels, fastened down and then covered by the next panel. And then that rib, that standing seam is bound to the other one there with like a wheel that creates pressure that bends it all together.
Isn't it raised a little bit?
Yeah.
The standing seam. So
Right.
You can see it when you look at a roof.
Yeah.
That it has that kind of a ribbed effect.
Right, and that's probably makes it very watertight as well.
And because you don't have any of your fasteners showing. You have what you call, what we call barn siding. And that's my roof is that, but it holds up. It's held up really well.
Barn siding?
Yeah, tell me
what is barn siding?
Yeah,
it's what we call like the metal,
corrugated?
the metal that you see on barns a lot. Where
But is it corrugated like wavy?
It's not necessarily. It has more seams in it, and the screws are put in on the exterior. They have a rubber washer.
Oh, I see. Okay, and that's that's probably an older style, or is that?
It's less expensive.
Right? Is that okay? Right. You pay for the innovation of the standing seam, because I can't imagine that it's too much more expensive to manufacture.
Typically, standing seam is made by your installer on site.
Oh, I didn't
bent
realize
on
that.
Site.
Oh, I didn't realize
more
that.
or less.
So it takes a little bit more time to put on there, and It was just thinking of that when I was seeing all that like weather. I'm like, oh man. But if you have a decent gauge, that'll hold up.
Oh yeah, and a good finish.
Yeah, I didn't think
because what can happen is the finish can get chipped off.
Oh, and then
and then you'll have issues.
Because I've seen metal roofs where the finish was peeling off.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good.
That's not a good finish.
Do people refinish those?
You can have it painted, but
what a bummer.
The factory finish is
it's supposed to be like a 50-year or something like that, right? Like, Yeah. But is there the other last thing, and then we'll move on, because where you're listening to Measure Twice, we want to talk about we were at market and all the things that happened there. But from a historical standpoint, I'm surprised you don't see more older homes with metal roofs.
It wasn't really much of a thing.
Like
forming that kind of like large sheets of metal, 100 years ago wasn't something that was done residentially.
Mm-mm.
Right. It just seemed like it was more utilitarian, like
it would have been shingle, like wood shingles,
shake or slate.
Yep.
Or I can't remember. There's another one. I can't remember what it's called.
Not copper.
Not copper.
I mean, you'd run into copper, or tin, but both.
Oh, tin, right. Is tin expensive too?
Yeah.
You don't see tin at all.
Hey, no.
I mean, at all anywhere. Like, weren't
Not
tin
much.
cans when there used to be tin cans? Like, a can of soda was in tin.
Yeah.
Which probably isn't good for you.
My son-in-law works for a commercial roofing company, and they're doing a zinc roof.
Oh,
it'll never have any mildew or anything.
I think it's a church. I think it's what they were talking about.
that's pretty. I bet that's a little pricey.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
But I bet it's super sturdy.
That's what they did at Notre Dame in Paris during the reconstruction. That's what they did. Use zinc.
So a lot of times we'll have a zinc strip put on at the cap because zinc will kill any mildew or moss that would grow in an area that doesn't get as much light.
When you look at a house and it's got tree cover and it's kind of got that like greenish,
mossy.
My house.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Lichen.
I just looked up zinc roofs. I wouldn't say they're uncommon.
They're expensive.
Oh yeah.
Very expensive.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be seeing that right.
Oh, you probably are.
Oh, this is a pre-owned zinc roof I'm looking at, and it's still expensive.
Pre-owned?
Yeah.
Like they took it off and they're selling it?
Yes. But it's
eBay.
Yeah.
Amazon.
Yeah.
No, it's a retailer that does, I guess.
Salvage?
Yeah. High quality zinc roofing. And you can get all kinds of colors, too. Look at that. A lot of red for some reason. And there's a blue one. $568. Is that right? For a square foot?
Is it a square foot or a square?
Oh, maybe it's a square.
Because a square is a 100 square, like 10 by 10 area.
Yeah, I think it's a square. And that's a cheaper one. I saw one that was $1,700 a square.
Yeah.
That's
Pricey.
pretty bad. That's pretty pricey.
Well, and then the labor to put that on would be far more than
and they have
most other roofs also.
I don't want to go down that necessarily. We don't need to go down the rabbit hole here, but you can make zinc look like whatever you want it to look like. Because I saw it looked like shingles, and then there was ones that look like a metal roof, and then this one that looks like its own, like something I've never seen before. I don't know what that is. Yeah, that's pretty wild. That's zinc, and I would think it would be reactive to the elements, but it's not. Apparently, it's pretty strong stuff. But didn't mean to devote a whole segment to roofing, but we had weather, so it's like people are going to be going outside with their binoculars and checking out their roof, at least along the state line. Anyway, it didn't really go.
Yeah, I didn't get any at my house.
I'm
waiting for that hailstorm. I hope my insurance agent doesn't listen to this.
Yeah.
for my barn.
Right.
So I could replace that roof.
It's pretty amazing when you see hail damage on siding, because you're always staring down the roof, but it can hit.
It's serious if
I've seen.
Yeah, but it can.
Yeah, it's holes in the side. I've seen that.
Yeah. The what is a few years ago in my neighborhood? It was not at our house. Our neighbor's house. The sills were all dented.
Oh yeah.
All there, like with a window, like were all dented, and you could see marks on the window where the hail was hitting it. Yeah, the ice was. It wasn't like damage, but it was like scuffed. It was pretty wild. But when we come back, we're going to take it out of the hailstorm and into the market where we saw all kinds of furniture and lighting and art. And we'll be right back. This is Measure Twice. Welcome back to Measure Twice. I'm Rob Perugini, along with Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors and Joel Graber from Graber Custom Remodeling. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential, and you're listening to us on Michiana's News Talk 95.3 MNC. We're brought to you in part by Leatherman Supply, everything windows, doors, cabinets, and countertops, with a showroom now open in Granger right next to C. Kramer Interiors and Hoosier Hardwood Floors, Michiana's trusted and valued experts on hardwood floors. You could visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com. We were talking about hail damage because of the storms, but we're going to segue back into our time we spent at market and some of the stuff we saw at the what's the in High Point, North Carolina. It's the
International Home Furniture Market.
International Home Furniture Market, but it was much more than that, much more than furniture, really. And Chris, off air, Chris was asked Joel a question like, can you put a metal roof over top of a shingled roof? And the answer is
yes.
Yes, in many cases. I'm sure there's some cases where you wouldn't want to do that.
I'm sure there's an application that you'd run into that you'd say,
like if your roof is rotted or something, you're not going to just like throw it on top of a rotted roof. But then that made Chris say, oh, it's like cushions.
But Joe mentioned that there's a membrane that they put down on top of the shingles before they put the...
So they don't just slap it on top of the shingles.
Because
to protect it. Yeah. Otherwise, that asphalt will wear from the backside.
Uh-huh.
And I said the same thing in upholstery. If you have a cushion that isn't wrapped, the Dacron will wear the fabric out from
and
underneath.
Dacron is what's in the cushion?
Sometimes they don't even put Dacron. If you see a cushion that's flat, just know what we call a crown, which is when it's you look at the cushion and it's kind of arched or domed.
Right.
That's called a crown. That is done by adding the Dacron or down, and then they wrap it in a muslin wrap. And
the muslin wrap protects the
cushion and the fabric
from friction.
From wearing it. Otherwise, if you don't have that, it'll wear out the fabric from underneath.
Because one of the fabrics is probably tougher, harder than the other.
Yeah, the Dacron's like sandpaper.
Well, you'd rather that cheap inside one getting worn out. Do you have to replace that periodically?
The wrap?
The wrap?
Oh, never.
Okay.
Never.
It's just if the cushion wears out for whatever reason, then it all gets replaced.
The muslin, I've never seen the muslin wear through.
So we've seen at market they had cutouts. We saw at least one where we saw like the literal cutout of what a piece of furniture looks like from the inside out. If you can imagine, somebody took a chainsaw and just cut through a sofa so you could see into.
Well, yeah, and it was layered, so like you could see into the structure of it, see the springs and the frame. Then there was a cutout also of the cushion, a cutout of the arm, so you could see the cushion on the arm and how that operates.
Well, and we talk about architects all the time on this show, but you can see architecture in furniture.
Oh yeah, the engineering.
And I think that there's architecture, too. There's some creative design behind the scenes that nobody's going to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
you're paying for it.
Yeah.
But you don't realize that you're paying for it because you don't see it.
because it's kind of easy to like walk through a box store furniture place and go, I don't see, I still put my fanny there. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
It's like, but you have to look past that and say, well, you're going to be replacing this. It's going to look shabby.
Quickly.
And you get maybe, you don't get enough use out of it for the price, the low price that you're paying,
right.
the per use. It's a real thing when you look at 8-way, tied, glued, screwed, the double dowed, right? All that.
But you didn't see that on that piece.
No, they were trying to sell against that.
Well, because their framing is plywood.
Right.
Which is a different construction and not inferior necessarily, but different.
Well, it's kind of ironic that we saw that. Like the one cutout we saw did not show us the 8-way tie.
No, it had the 8-way tie.
I was going to say, it did have the 8-way tie on
it. Did. It just didn't have the
tied. It was 8-way.
It just didn't have the framing of that other upholstery companies use, the solid maple, and you can see the joinery and the dowels and the leg is part of the construction of the frame, not just a screw on.
Right.
Because that gives more stability to the frame.
Yeah, if you've ever sat on a couch, like maybe a box store couch, and you get that give, it's because the leg isn't part of the construction, right? The structure of the thing.
And you saw spring edge fronts and all of that a lot of manufacturers have gotten away from.
Yeah.
The spring edge front is something that I wanted to talk about because when we talked about this last time, we kind of just did that overview, but really that spring edge front, Chris, could you give us a good description of what we mean when we say a spring edge front on a sofa, right? Because that's
where chairs.
It's on chairs too.
Chairs.
It's the rail right underneath the cushion. It's the structure underneath the cushion. And when you sit on it, a spring edge means that when you sit on it, that whole rail system compresses.
Right.
And what that does is it makes it a more comfortable seat because it kind of almost compresses to you. So when you're sitting on it, your legs, it kind of lowers the seat a little bit.
Anybody that sits on it, their feet
touch
flat
the ground
on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which, for me, not being very tall, I was like, well, I noticed that. Now, if a Joel, maybe it wasn't noticeable enough for you. I don't know.
I could tell a difference for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
But for me, it was like every one of those I sat on.
Because it fits to who is sitting on it. The other thing that I found interesting about that too is, and I didn't think about, one of the reps was saying that also helps to protect the fabric and the cushion from being crushed or worn.
Oh yeah, right. It works together. To keep it a little bit more longevity.
And that used to be the standard of all better quality upholstery was a spring edge front, but now it's become rare. It's not as prevalent.
Is it rare because it's more expensive to make? Is that what simply that's what it is? Or
it's rare because it's number one, it's more expensive. Number two, anymore with all these configurable upholstery lines out there where you can choose the arm, the back, the base. You can basically design
like
your own
10,000 choices for one
one sofa.
Yeah.
So in order to manufacture that more efficiently, they just build one frame and they don't put the spring edge in it
because of all the variants.
Because I can't even imagine what it would take to add that as another feature.
Yeah, if you went to a box store, furniture store, I don't think you'd find one of those.
No.
So my question would be, because does it also, like, you can get a custom length with those too, right?
Mm-hmm. Some of them.
So would it be would it be unreasonable for that just to be like what they do? Like that's just a standard feature for that?
What, the spring edge?
Yeah, and then that would take away some of the.
I think a lot of it is cost. It is why it's not as prevalent.
Yeah. I mean, I would see where it would take a decent amount extra time.
But time is cost, right? I mean,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
When you I don't know if you kind of got the gist as you're going from showroom to showroom, especially at the higher end. They're trying to keep the cost more affordable, because at the higher end, we're not talking $599 sofas. We're talking $5,000 sofas on up. So there's always that struggle with the manufacturers to balance the cost, because they don't, they want to try to contain it so that it doesn't get completely out of sight.
Right. Because it could. We saw some sofas that were out of sight.
Yes.
Not for everybody that were out of sight, but
or the gold bed.
The gold bed is
the gold leaf.
Yeah,
it's like, whoa.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I don't know if I can fall asleep.
I've been wanting to scrape the gold off.
Yeah. It's like, can
I sell this?
I'm gonna go buy some eggs.
Yeah.
Some of this gold. But these are things that are meaningful, and we didn't really cover them in the last show. That the spring edge front, the difference in construction, these are all. I mean, this is like once when you have a chance to compare, it's meaningful.
Yes.
If you don't have a chance to compare, if you've never sat on one, then okay, you don't know. But once you do, it's really tough to you feel that extra comfort.
Well, it's interesting. Jamie, who's one of my designers, is funny because he goes, I liked it better when I didn't know the difference.
Oh, yeah, you're damaged. Yeah, you can't.
Yeah.
But when we come back, let's talk about, I wanted to get into some of the art we saw and things like that at market. And we'll be right back. This is Measure Twice. Welcome back to Measure Twice. I'm Rob Perugini, along with Joel Graber from Graber Custom Remodeling and Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential, and you're listening to us on Michiana's Newstalk 95.3 MNC. We are brought to you in part by Leatherman Supply. Everything windows, doors, cabinets, and countertops, with the showroom now open in Granger right next to C. Kramer Interiors and Hoosier Hardwood Floors. Michiana's trusted and valued experts on hardwood floors. You can visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com. We were talking, we're all over the map. We went from roofs, because of the hail, but we were talking about kind of the architecture and structure of furniture and the spring edge front and how the furniture is constructed. But I wanted to talk about some of the art that we saw. But before we do that, you had said that the company we were talking about that had the cutaway, they used plywood. Mm-hmm. And we talk about the use of plywood and solid wood all the time. And that's stability, right? The movement, like a plywood will move more than...
No,
less.
Okay, less. Okay, I knew I was going to get that. So it's just different, not better or worse.
Correct.
So if your sofa's made out of plywood, it's not bad.
It's not a bad thing, no. There's different plies.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to the whole thing, to both of them. What you don't get with that is you don't get the solid leg all the way. That's part of the frame with the plywood. But you don't get all the movement with the plywood that you would get with...
Right, so there's a give
There
and take.
shouldn't be much movement in a solid wood frame.
Yeah.
Because when they kill dry it, they take it down to like 5% moisture.
It's still going to move.
But that's why they glue and double dowel so that you don't get the movement and
that way you don't get
the joint
creaks and
right. And
now in 100 years from now that you may, but that can be repaired.
You're right, and you can talk in terms of decades in that furniture.
Yes.
Yeah, that furniture is heirloom.
So I just wanted to finish that off because I think we kind of left that hanging a little bit. Like there's a difference there. But one of the coolest things that we saw to me was the art, like that there was art to walk through and look at,
and overwhelm you.
It was clearly you could because I'm sure we went into what one.
Yeah.
but there were probably others there.
Oh my goodness, yes. Yep. And you kind of start. It's hard to purchase because it's like, for stock or when you're trying to buy something for your inventory, it's like, whoa, there's so much,
and it's so subjective.
It is very much so.
The most subjective,
Yeah.
If you look at lists of like the least, like what the thing you shouldn't buy people, if you look at lists of like what shouldn't you buy somebody for their birthday, art is always on that list because it's like, how on earth can you do that unless you're getting like a Mona Lisa for them or some crazy, but
it's personal. Art is personal.
Yeah. And so that's where I was like going to go. It's like we walked around there and I saw art. I could be surrounded by art. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're doing a design project for somebody, Chris, and art is involved, that's got to be like, okay, everything stops and we have to focus on this.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't just fly through that.
No, you can't just fly through it. And it's, like I said, it's hard sometimes to take art to a client and install it. And sometimes because it's like, again, it's personal. They either like it or they don't like it. And it's even more difficult to buy it for stock, to put it on the floor.
Oh, yeah.
Or for something you think you could sell.
Yeah. Because it's really, you're taking a chance.
Right. Yep. You try to keep it, what I want to say, universal, not so specific of a theme or something.
Now, when we were there, you purchased some cloth.
I did.
Which were really unique. And when you were buying them, I'm like, they can appear very unique, but then when you look at them, it's like, yes, but they also would fit in a lot of places. They weren't huge.
Right.
They weren't giant pieces of art. Because that's a facet, right? Size.
Yep.
Right. And they weren't crazy, it wasn't like.
Well, they could work with a number of different styles too.
Mm-hmm. So you're trying to, I would call it more neutral.
Yeah.
More blendable. You could work that in almost anywhere.
Yeah. And for these particular pieces, just to pull back the curtain, we're talking about going to the International Furniture Market in High Point, North Carolina. We're talking about the art there, and Chris bought these cloth pieces of art that were behind a frame and glass. It wasn't like they were, but you could have a set, so you could get 4 or 6 that were related, or you could just have one, and it kind of is cool on there. But when you're looking at art, Chris, there's different facets, right? There's size, color, taste. Like, do I like it?
Yes. A lot of it I didn't care for.
Yeah, and I think that's normal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably going to have more that you don't care for than you do.
Right. And then other people will be coming in and going, there's more I like and less I don't like. You know what I mean? So it's completely subjective. But the gallery, not gallery, but the manufacturer or whatever, if you want to call it, for the art, the one we went into, you guys spent a lot of time talking to the gal that was part of behind the scenes.
Yeah, we were talking about to the production lady.
Because that manufacturer will do pretty much anything in any size. You can customize anything that they do.
And she was really focused. Well, I guess she was compartmentalizing. This manufacturer, I guess, had some inefficiencies in manufacturing. So they had everything look.
Well, it sounded like she went there because where she was before had those inefficiencies.
And she fixed them.
No, they didn't want to fix them, was my understanding. But these folks did.
Right. But
because that behind the scenes.
Maybe I missed it. But yeah, she's like the Doge of manufacturing.
Yeah, so so her job is to go in and fix these inefficiencies so that it actually can basically reduce the cost on some of the pieces that they're manufacturing because they're becoming more efficient with their printing or whatever. However, they're doing.
There were like ghost costs that were built in that were unnecessary.
Right.
They were being passed along to the customer. But they're unnecessary to have. She said she was like,
well, that and then the time that it took to get things too.
Right. So there was a lot going on there, but she was focused on the fabrics. Because you were looking at
that fabric line that they have.
Yeah, And she's like, that was the easiest place to start because of the way fabric is manufactured. She's like, you can look like a rock star because you can go into that type of textile and say, okay, this, and not get rid of anybody. She was pretty adamant that nobody's getting fired or laid off. What they're doing is making it so they could make more so that it's not scarce and the price isn't just driven up because you can't get it.
Right.
And I thought that was really interesting. And then when she was talking about the art, it was distribution and display. Like there were, I guess, artists that weren't getting shown just because they didn't have an order, like a method to show them, which was kind of interesting. Digitizing their showroom she was talking about, where they were requiring them to produce all this art so they could see it, when she's like, that's not necessary.
Right.
You don't need to have that finished work. It was really cool. Like, there's a lot going on there.
There's a lot. We only see what's on the surface.
Right. You could tell that was even the surface, and you guys are already behind the scenes as buyers.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But the art was overwhelming, and one of the criticisms I had when we were walking through there is that they tried to separate the art
by category, by artist,
but it was like it really didn't feel separate to me. It was like,
no, it all kind of runs together.
Yeah. They needed some white space in between.
There wasn't any.
No.
You turn the corner and there's another whole floor to ceiling wall.
Floor to ceiling. Chris is not kidding. There was art so high up you really couldn't even tell what it meant. Like, you couldn't even really, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, yes. And row after row after row. It wasn't just 2 aisles.
No.
And it wasn't like the walls weren't far enough apart that you could step back and really see it either.
That's a good point. I didn't even think of that. You're right. You could not get a perspective.
Right. If it's something that you're right on, like the bubble wrap.
Yeah.
The print on the bubble wrap. I mean, you couldn't get back. You had to get right up to it.
You had to get close to it.
Yes. And they had it in a weird spot because it was a bar. There was a bar there. You couldn't get real
like
close
in front
to
of it, like straight onto it.
So when we come back, let's talk about that art perspective, because that's such a good point that I didn't think of till just now. We'll be right back to talk about some art. This is Measured Twice. Welcome back to Measure Twice. I'm Rob Perugini, along with Chris Kramer from C. Kramer Interiors and Joel Graber from Graber Custom Remodeling. This is the show that helps you envision your home's potential, and you're listening to us on Michiana's News Talk 95.3 MNC. Had a vapor lock there. I was like, what are you listening to us on? And we're brought to you in part by Leatherman Supply. Everything windows, doors, cabinets, and countertops with the showroom now open in Granger, right next to C. Kramer Interiors. And Hoosier Hardwood Floors, Michiana's trusted and valued experts on hardwood floors. You can visit them at HoosierHardwoodFloors.com. We're talking about art, and not your Uncle Art, who lives, up north. We're talking about
actually lives in Allen County, but whatever.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. But we're at the International Furniture. What was it? Market. International
Furniture Market.
Home Furniture
Market in High Point, North Carolina. And there was we walked through an extensive art collection. And there were probably 5 other buildings just like that somewhere.
That was a small one too.
Really?
Just to give you that. Oh wait, you walked through John Richards too. Remember?
Oh yeah, you're right.
That was even bigger.
That's right. But they were similar in their display.
Yeah, floor to ceiling,
just packed.
Yeah,
packed.
How anybody could take in that art.
The thing at John Richards that I was surprised at about, because it just never even crossed my mind that it would be something that would be necessary, was all the plants.
Oh,
yeah, there was like a plant room.
Yeah, the artificial
plants. I was like, okay, well, it makes sense because you see this stuff as part of a home. But I just didn't even think like that. That's something that you could go in and order.
No, I'm not a huge fan of artificial plants.
Most people aren't, but there's, one here and there is okay. But there's an old design saying that when in doubt, use a plant.
But they mean a real plant? Or
well, it's supposed to be real. I mean,
but not everybody can keep a real plant. I mean, that's a thing.
No,
I mean, if you don't have a green thumb, then...
Or the right lighting or the right whatever.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard. It's difficult to keep live plants.
That room reminded me of like what Elvis's alligator room would look like.
But we sell it, so I mean, we buy a few pieces of it, and it sells.
The
artificial plants,
yeah, and they're mostly silk, right?
Or something.
Or something.
Well, but there was that.
I
one
mean,
place
no, it used to be mostly silk, but with all of the different
synthetics,
now.
yeah.
We did see something cool. That guy that did the metal. Remember the metal flowers?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That was really
his stuff was cool.
Work.
His things are really sharp.
Now the difference between that guy's display and the other display is like you could get perspective at his place,
right? But it was much smaller.
Yeah.
He had more of a kiosk versus a building.
Yeah. He had like 60 things on display.
Yeah, not 6,000.
Yeah, conservatively 6,000.
Yeah,
Now, but Joel had mentioned something like in those like massive displays, you couldn't step back and look at it. It made me think like in your home, if you're holding art, having art on the wall, do you need to keep that in mind? Like, am I far enough away from this art to look at it?
If you remember when we went to John Richards, that humongous piece of art that we saw from a distance was made out of zippers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was the woman's face.
Yeah.
And the closer you got to it, the more distorted it became because you need the distance to get the full perspective of it.
Otherwise,
went out of
focus.
So if you put that in a small room, you're not going to.
It just looks like a bunch of zippers.
You're not going to. You won't even see the image because you need to step back to see it. So if it's in a small room, you're not going to appreciate it. And so it needs to be in a large space.
And you kind of needed to be at eye level with it, which was also strange. Like you couldn't look up at it and get the same.
Yeah, because it changes because of the way they use plastic zippers in all those different colors to form that face, and
they're stacked on top of each other.
Yeah,
like there's some depth to it.
There's depth to it, but if you're right up against it, you lose all of that detail. All you see are colored zippers.
So if somebody was like, I'm in love with that piece, I need to have it. You would, in your mind, you need a room that is
pretty good size,
can handle it.
Mm-hmm. That you can walk in the front. Maybe you're walking in the front door and you've got a wall straight ahead that you can display something like that catches your eye immediately. That would be an awesome place for something like that. I mean, I thought that I loved the piece.
Yeah,
it was beautiful.
It was cool. It was really cool.
But it was also $6,000, I think.
Yeah.
So it was very expensive, and it was huge.
And I'm going to tell you that the art people, like just $6,000 for a piece of art to art people is not a lot.
No, that's not a lot of money.
Yeah, that's not.
But it's not one only either.
No, that's what got me. That's where the buck stops. It's like Chris could have ordered 70 of those if he wanted to.
Yep.
No problem.
They probably get those. They sell those all day long.
Yeah.
So you're not getting
something unique.
You're getting each piece might be just slightly different.
That's why I like the cloth, because basically there's a finite amount of that cloth.
No, you can keep making that cloth.
I don't think that was the getup on that. I think that was.
I think it is. They can reproduce that 100 times.
Oh, you fooled me then. Now I feel bad. No, I'm just kidding.
So it's not some things.
He's canceling his order.
Some things are original, but most of it is not.
No, we didn't.
So for the price for $6,000, that was a very large piece.
What was the artist was Choi? What was her name?
They've got a lot of original art, but it's mass produced.
But they said that for a fee, she would produce something that was only yours.
Right.
That was not
Hong. Her name was Hong.
Yeah,
that was not who did that one though.
No.
But it was in the same gallery where they had that.
I did not love her stuff.
Oh, with the glass with the
yeah.
A little of that goes a long way.
But art is subjective. We're talking about art that we saw at the International Home Furniture Show in High Point, North Carolina. art was everywhere because clearly it's
integral.
Yeah.
It's a very important piece. It's a very important element to an interior.
Including accessories.
Correct.
That's
the finishing touch.
Yeah.
Just one more layer.
And
nothing makes the house feel more homey than when you put your art pieces on the wall.
Yeah. What's funny is there are probably high school students that are producing fired ceramic that also would work in your home. And I'm not saying that to diminish what we saw, but if you're looking for one of a kind, that's the real struggle, is to find a one of a kind that you can afford, because you might get into the tens of thousands of dollars if you have a one of a kind sculpture from an artist.
Mm-hmm. Depending on the artist and their notoriety.
Right. Whereas these pieces, you have something that's unique probably to your neighborhood. It's probably not unique to the world.
Right.
But I thought there were some really cool things. There were some things that creeped me out too, like the little people on the rocks.
I have them.
I know that one. I didn't want to tell you, but I was like, man, those
are cool. Everybody likes them.
They are cool. Like
the cloak.
I will say this. I saw them at C. Kramer, and they aren't near as creepy. I think it might have been the way they were set up and the lighting.
Yeah, I think so too. Because it was like
they look like ghostly or
ghostly is what I was like. Oh,
demonic.
Yeah, scared. So I was scared. I didn't sleep.
They're
that
cloaked
night.
Figures,
but
they're kind of cool.
But it was cool because then right next to them were other versions of that, and it was like, oh, I could see even trends in art, because you were like, pay attention to trends, and it's like, oh, that's a trend that's going through there. But it wasn't so trendy that you couldn't keep it for a while.
Right. Yeah. Some of it is.
Yes.
Some of it is.
Well, art is real easy to get to the
trend.
Yeah.
Everything's a trend. You can't avoid it.
Right.
You just can't.
In this town, in downtown South Bend, I was in a little art shop that's no longer there. They had a real Remington. Like an actual Remington.
Mm-hmm.
It was $75,000.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, who on earth is going to happen by this store? Walk in.
You did.
I did. I did. But you can't, when you see a one-of-a-kind piece like that, it stands out. Like, you can't.
Oh, yeah. It stops you in your tracks.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. This has been Measured Twice.
Podcasts by Federated Media.